We are on week number 5 here. We've been doing this series going through the life of Joseph and looking at the tests that he's gone through. There's 10 tests he goes through where he moves from the dream that God gives him at age 17 to his destiny, which is kind of ruler of earth in a way, at age 30. A lot happens there, including 10 tests. Now, not every Christian will go through all 10 of these tests, and they certainly won't not necessarily go through them in the same order, but these are 10 tests Christians have to pass. The first test was the pride test. Joseph failed that one, and because of that, he faced the pit test. So that was the second one we were talking about. And then last week, and I asked everybody Saturday night, and I got blank stares. Last week, we talked about the prosperity test. She didn't even have to check her notes. Sarah, I hope you're watching. The prosperity test. The prosperity test is the test that most Christians want to take because it sounds fun, but almost every Christian fails. It's remarkable how nothing gets us to fall away from Christ faster than things going well in our life. I remember once I was crying out to the Lord in a time of my life when things were really bad, and I asked him that question, why do things always go bad? And I felt like he's answered, if things were always good, would I ever hear from you? And it's like, no, probably not. So we're going to talk today about the purity test and what it means to stay pure. Now, most of you have some church background. Some of you are Reformed or recovering Catholics. I don't know how to put that. Some of you have been to CCD class. Those of you Protestants, you probably have Vacation Bible School and Sunday school. I'm just saying, you all know the story of Joseph and Potiphar's wife. Probably. You're somewhat familiar with it. But we're going to kind of really slowly go through it because there's a lot of things that are densely packed in there. And the purity test is really important because we're supposed to stay pure. In fact, Jesus tells us that. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Well, we all want to see God, right? So how do we get our heart pure? What's that mean to get your heart pure? Proverbs puts it this way, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from your heart. You are created not body, mind, and spirit, but rather body, soul, and spirit. And your heart is part of your soul. That's where decisions are made. And then everything else just simply justifies it. I'm thinking about buying a car right now, and I'm afraid my heart wants it. And so now my mind is finding all the reasons why I need to get a new car. It's like that's the way it works. Your heart wants it first, and then your mind rationalizes it after that. So we have to guard our heart, because if our heart's full of a bunch of junk, you're going to kind of do a bunch of junk. So let's take a look at Joseph's heart, and let's look at through the purity test. Now, last week we talked about how he was betrayed by his family, thrown in a pit, and then sold to slavers who sold him to a guy named Potiphar, who was actually captain of the guard, probably not a good guy, smart, of course, ruthless, surely, but a pagan also, and yet God could put him into that house, and he blessed Joseph, and because he blessed Joseph, Potiphar was blessed, which is kind of a funny way of living, right? Because everything I do blesses somebody else. But that's where Joseph was, and he was okay with that. So now we're going to pick up the tale with his next line of the Bible, which is interesting. It's what you call a foreshadowing line in literature. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. Now, why would the Bible be telling us that? He's a good-looking guy. He's 18 years old now, and he's handsome in form and appearance, which means he's not only pretty in the face, he's got that body too. He got those six-pack abs because he's a slave. He works. He doesn't eat a lot. He's not getting a lot of cake. This guy's fit, right? And so he's fit, and he looks good. The Bible wants us to know that. Well, why would the Bible want us to know that? Well, the next line tells that. It came to pass after these things that his master's wife, that's Potiphar's wife, cast longing eyes upon him. He must have really looked good. The wife's checking him out as he's working around the house. It was a big palace kind of a house. He was captain of the guard. And she's looking at him. And she does not really have a very subtle form of seduction. She just goes straight up to him and says this, lie with me. That's not much of a seduction. That's just kind of like flat out, let's do this. So then Joseph's response is where we see his heart coming out. I want you to see his response. It's really important. He refused, and he says to his master's wife, look, my master does not know what is with me in the house, and he has committed all he has to my hand. There is no one greater in this house than I, nor has he kept back anything from me except you, because you are his wife. That's interesting, right? He's 18 years old. Now, we found out that's what happened, right? When Potiphar looked, everything Joseph did worked out. He goes, I'm going to put the whole house in his hands. And everything he did worked out. Now, Potiphar was shrewd. He was a shrewd man, smart to see that. And so now Joseph is running the house, and it said last week, if you remember, all he cared about, the only decision he made in the day was what kind of bread he would have that day. That was his big decision point for the day. Everything else Joseph was taken care of. Everything was running smoothly, and he is now in charge of the whole house. The only thing he's not allowed to have, naturally, is the man's wife. And he says, he's held back nothing from me except you. Now that's interesting, because I want you to see that the test here is not just sexual. Yeah, there's a component there, clearly. But there's another test here for power. Because the one thing he's not allowed to have is now the one thing that he's offered. Right? And if you recall, when this whole thing started, humankind started, it was the same situation. You could have anything you want in the garden except that one tree. And what do they want? That one tree. Mark Twain once said, the problem is that God made the fruit forbidden. They didn't want the fruit because it was the fruit. They wanted it because it was forbidden. If he really wanted to help humanity, he would have made the snake forbidden, and they would have eaten the snake. Probably true. Mark Twain, the theologist. So the one thing he can't have is the one thing he's being offered. And I want to point out that he's 18. Guys, remember 18? It's a good time in life, wasn't it? I could fall off a house when I was 18 and dust it off and go, oh, that'll hurt tomorrow a little bit. You know, now I'd be in ICU for 3 weeks. You were just nothing would stop you. When you're 18, it's like, oh, this is such a great time in my life, And yeah, there are hormones flowing through your body too. And so he's 18 years old. And it's not like he has other women he's allowed to have. And so he's got this situation now being offered to him, something he's not allowed to have. He's now allowed to take as far as she's concerned. Now, he could be loyal to Potiphar. That might be why he's turning this down. Hey, your husband's good to me. I can't do that. But that's not what he says. And when I was 18 years old, was right out of high school, I guess, and we had been through this thing called Campus Life and my youth group, and they taught us how to deal with these kind of temptations. I don't know if they teach that anymore, but we used to be taught not to have sex before marriage. I don't know where they are now, but that was our what we're taught. And there were 3 things they always gave us to keep us on the straight. You don't want to do this because, first of all, someone might find out. That was always danger when you're in high school if your parents found out, because parents really did not take kindly on that, and the girl did not want to have a reputation like that. When I grew up, nice girls didn't, and so you don't want to. But you might get caught. And then, of course, they blasted all kind of videos and movable videos. They had movies back then, movies and stuff about the STDs. You might get an STD. You don't want to get an STD. That could be nasty. Like, oh, man, I don't want that. And then, of course, the biggie was, what if she gets pregnant? And what's going to happen to your life, right? Everything's going to be changed. But he doesn't say that. I want you to notice that what he doesn't say is anything to do with that. He doesn't, say, well, what if you get pregnant? What if someone finds out? What if you have some kind of nasty STD? He doesn't use any of those. And the reason he doesn't is because she has an answer for each one of them. I don't think this is Potiphar's wife's first time around here. I'm pretty sure she's done this before. I'm pretty sure she does it serially. She has an answer for every one of those. None of those would have worked. Oh, we won't get caught. I have this planned out. Or I'm clean. Don't worry about it. Oh, I won't get pregnant. Well, all these things we can cover. But I want you to see what Joseph says instead of any of those things. He says this: how then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? She doesn't have an answer for that one. That was one she wasn't expecting. Because she doesn't have a relationship with her God the way Joseph has with his God. What he's basically saying is, in this one, this isn't normal. He was sold as a slave at 17 and a half years old or so, and he doesn't even speak Egyptian, and he's sent to a different country, and he's there. He doesn't know the language. He knows nobody. He has nothing. And in about a year, he is already in charge of the house he was placed into. speaking not only fluent Egyptian, but fluently bossing everybody else around because he was just that good. And he looks at his life and he remembers he was in a pit and ready to die. And he cried out to God, and God rescued him. So he's basically saying, I should be dead right now. But I'm not only alive, I'm prospering in my place. And that's not normal. That's God. But the thing that I've always missed about this verse is I missed what he was really saying. Because what I thought he was saying was, I can't afford to lose God. I need him, right? There's still things that are going to come because we know things are going to come in his life, right? He's not done yet. But he doesn't know. I mean, he doesn't know exactly what's going to happen. I thought he was saying, I can't afford to lose God because God's making me prosper. But that's not what he's saying. See, I understand that. That's a decision I think we would all make. Do you really want to make God mad at you so he stops blessing you? Oh, I don't want that. I don't want God's blessing to leave me. I need God's blessing on my life. Okay, I'll change my ways so I can keep God blessing me, but that's not what Joseph's saying. This is more remarkable by far. He's not saying I need God to keep getting better. He's saying this, what God has already done for me is so great that I can't possibly find it in my heart to sin against him. He's standing because of what he has already done. And he knows this sin's against God because our sin's always first against God. I'm not sinning against Potiphar. I'm not saying I'm my future wife. I'm sinning against God, and I can't do that. He's not resisting temptation so God's presence doesn't leave him. He's resisting him as acknowledgement of what he's already done. Let me give you a parable here. And you can readjust this parable to fit your own life. I'm going to spin one for you. Suppose this person, he's a guy, and he just got laid off at work. And in 2 weeks, he doesn't have a job. They're closing down his plant, they're closing down his division or whatever. This actually happened to me. Me and 200 of my closest friends were all laid off. Here's your severance pay, have fun. So that's this guy's situation, but it's worse for him because actually he's got a child with special needs, medical, and he can't afford to lose his insurance. So he's got to pick up that COBRA payment. Ever see that COBRA payment? Some of you people who got laid off? Man, that's nasty when you realize what you owe to keep your, you can keep your insurance if you can afford it. So he's looking at that, plus the fact on top of that, he knows that not everything that his child needs is even covered. So he's looking at thousands of dollars worth of hospital bills on top of that as well. He's just been laid off, and to make matters worse, the transmission just fell out of his car. Now he's got to get that fixed somehow. And in the middle of that, he gets a phone call from his uncle, his mom's brother. He hardly ever saw the guy. But he calls him and says, hey, I'm coming through your town. Can I take you to lunch? And he's thinking, whoa, one meal I don't have to pay for. Sure, let's get together. So they get together, they talk for a while, and they kind of share some old times. And it's really nice. He kind of forgets his troubles for a little bit, and the guy's talking to him, and it's really a nice time. And then at the end, he kind of says, hey, what's going on in your life? Tell me. Well, maybe just because they've been talking for so long, he's so loose. He just lets it loose. He says, oh, uncle, he just lets him out. Tells him everything. He listens. He just listens quietly. And when he's all done, he says, let me see if I can help you out a little bit. He reaches in the pocket, pulls out his checkbook, and he writes him a check for $50,000. He said, what's this for? He says, you know what? I wasn't close to you growing up. You're my only sister's only son. Let me do this for you. This will take care of it. You should be able to get back on your feet. It'll wipe out all of your debt. And he's like, he can't believe it, like just like that. And so he says, I don't think I accept it. You have to accept it. But there is one favor I have, if you would. I came into town because my dad had a fishing cabin that we used to go up to as family all the time. And I really need to sell it. And I can't bring myself to go look at all the stuff that's there. I don't know what's there. Would you do me the favor of going and doing an inventory of the cabin for me? And just if you see anything worthwhile, inventory it, because otherwise I'm going to sell the things lock, stock, and barrel. I can't bring myself to go back there. He said, absolutely. I'll do that for you. So he does. He goes to the cabin, and it's mostly just junk and stuff, old fishing stuff, and he's just throwing stuff away. But he comes across a box at the desk, and he opens up the box, and inside is a collection of perfectly good Rolex watches. How in the world did Grandpa have these? He has no idea. But each one of them is very, very valuable. He can look at them because he just knows. And he thinks, no one knows these are here but me. I could take one of them and no one would know. Now, if you're that guy, would you do it? I see your faces. You're looking like, what? Are you a psychopath? Why would you steal off this? Because no one will know. Right? No one would possibly ever find out. He doesn't even know those watches are there. Would you take a watch? I've asked this question to people. No one ever says yes. Maybe they don't want to admit it, but no one ever says yes. And I ask him why. He just wrote me a check for $50,000. So what we're saying is what he has done for us is so great that we couldn't possibly conceive of doing evil against him. So why isn't what God has done for you so great that it doesn't stop you from doing evil against him? Don't we say that God has given us much more than $50,000 could buy? Isn't it beyond any debt we could pay? And yet we sin all the time against God, and we try to make it up because he didn't answer the prayer we just prayed. God, if you'd answered my prayer, I wouldn't have to steal this. If you'd done what I wanted you to do, we wouldn't have to do this right now. I can break your word because you didn't answer my prayer. And you gave me no choice. So we're always trying to say God's being held to a standard of what he hasn't done for us yet. And we forget the standard of what he has already done. And there's the difference between a pure heart and our heart. Joseph had a pure heart. He said, if God never does anything else for me again, I'll still serve him. Would you? If heaven were never promised, would you still be a Christian? Would you still serve the Lord? If he says, okay, we're quits until heaven, I'm not going to answer any more prayers on earth. If that's what God said to you, would you still serve him because of what he's already done? Because we sing songs that say that, but I don't think very many Christians believe that. And I'm not saying God's not going to answer your prayers anymore. I'm just simply saying, hasn't he done enough? Joseph thought that he had. A pure heart would. And so he says, how can I do this evil thing and sin against my God? I can't do it. I can't. And she had no answer for that. So you think she's going to give up? Oh, no. Now she wants him even more. The Bible says this. Paul writing to Timothy says this about pure hearts. He says, do not pay attention to myths and studies of endless genealogies, which give rise to useless speculation rather than advance the plan of God. And this does not necessarily mean you can't do the 23andMe DNA test, although I'm using it as scripture as to why I don't. But that's not what he's talking about. The genealogy he's talking about is they're trying to prove that they're related to Jesus in some sort of way. It makes them more important, and that's what he's saying. That's stupid. Stop that. The goal of this instruction is for you to love from a pure heart. That's the hard part, right? The pure heart in good conscience and sincere faith. And he says this, he says, some people stray from these things and turn aside to fruitless discussions. They like to talk about stupid stuff. They want to be teachers of the law even though they don't understand either what they're saying or what matters. So they still want to be teachers. They have no idea what they're talking about. And he goes on and says this, therefore, if anyone cleanses himself from that nonsense, he'll be a vessel for honor, sanctified and useful for the master, prepared for every good work. Flee from youthful lusts and pursue righteousness, faith, love with those who call upon the Lord out of a pure heart. We're going to have to not just walk away from these lusts, and lusts are more than just sexual, but sexual's there. We don't have to walk away from this. We have to run away from this, flee from it, run away, which is, of course, what Joseph does. So it was, as she spoke to Joseph day by day, that he did not heed her to lie with her or to be with her. But it happened about this time when Joseph went into the house to do his work, none of the men of the house were inside. Now, some people believe he actually hired those men to stay near him. But I don't think it's an accident those guys are gone right now. I think she planned this out. Okay, he's trying to avoid me. We'll make sure that doesn't happen. So she gives them all errands to go run. So she knows, because, Joseph has run the house. She knows he's coming in. She knows exactly when this happened. None of the men were in the house. And she caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled and ran outside. She grabs him, he goes, shrugs out of it and runs outside. And so it was, when she saw he had left his garment in her hand and fled outside, she called to the men of the house when they came back and spoke to them, saying, see, he's brought in this Hebrew, he being her husband, brought in this Hebrew to mock us. He came to me to lie with me, but I cried out in a loud voice. And when he heard me, that I lifted my voice and cried out, he left his garment and he fled and went outside. And I'm just going to point out that this garment was, the word for the garment is coat. This is the second time a coat has gotten Joseph into problems. He should just stop wearing them. The coat of many colors got him in trouble with his brothers. Now this coat he gets left behind. Just stop wearing coats. T-shirts only, white plain tees from now on. Joseph, coats are problems. The funny thing is that the Bible has told us something really, really important here, that Joseph is handsome in form and appearance, but doesn't tell us anything about Potiphar. We have no idea what she looks like. I'm just going to point that out there, that she may have been a trophy wife. She may have been an old hag. We don't know. It's possible. We have no idea what exactly he's running from here. But what he's running from is the youthful lust, because when you're 18 years old, I don't think it matters as much. Anyway, moving on. So she kept the garment with her until his master, that's her husband, came home. And then she spoke to him with words like these, saying, the Hebrew servant who you brought came in to mock me, and so it happened as I lifted my voice and cried out that he left his garment with me and fled outside. And so it was, when the master heard the words which his wife spoke to him, saying, your servant did this to me, his anger was aroused. And then Joseph's master took him and put him into prison, a place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in prison. Now, I'm just going to point out that he could have had him killed. For that, he could have had him killed. He certainly could have had him castrated. That was a very common thing in those days. Daniel got castrated. He certainly could have done that. Hey, we'll take care of this problem. But he sent him to prison instead. I think he knew his wife was lying. I have a hunch. But what's he going to do? He can't call her a liar. That's going to embarrass her and him. He has really no choice here. I think that he was angry when she first told him. I think he thought about it and thought, this is probably not Joseph. So he has to do something, but he can't kill him. He sends him to prison instead. I think this is God's grace still on Joseph's life. But the thing that's frustrating is, why is he not rewarded? He did the right thing. He worked hard to do the right thing. He was avoiding her at all costs. He couldn't avoid her forever because, they worked in the same place. That was his job. He was a slave. It's not like he could quit. He did the best he could do. He did the right thing. And his reward for doing the right thing is to be sent to prison. As C.S. Lewis put it, no good deed goes unpunished. This frustrates me as a believer, right? Because he should be honored for this, not thrown into prison for this. And I wonder why. Why in the world would that be his reward? Because this is what the Bible tells us. A wicked person earns deceptive wages, but the one who sows righteousness reaps a sure reward. This sounds like a reward. Here's our problem. We always look for things to make sense here on earth. And I'm just telling you right now, they're not going to. There's no promise in the Bible that says everything's going to work out here on earth. That's not in the Bible. I know people preach it, but it's not there. In fact, Jesus tells you, in this world, you will have tribulations. There's no promise you're not going to go through bad things on this earth. There's no promise that on earth, all the good people are rewarded and all the bad people are punished. Not on this life. It's the next life. Your reward comes after this one. And if you don't understand that's the timetable of heaven, you're going to be a very frustrated Christian. Because God does not promise you everything's going to work out down here. What he promises you is no matter what happens, he'll be with you. Which is why the secret of the Christian life is this: require the presence of God. Because as long as God's presence is with you, have it. Because he had his sure reward. Because God was still with him. Ephesians puts it this way, nice and beautiful, tell you what your reward is. Because of his great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ, even when we were dead in transgressions. It is by grace you've been saved, and God raised us up with Christ and seated us with him in heavenly realms, in order that in the coming ages he might show incomparable riches of his grace expressed in his kindness to us through Jesus. You're not going to believe what's coming, he said. That's what you're living for. It's not going to all make sense on earth, but the Lord was with Joseph, and that's what he wanted. Here's what's interesting. I was thinking about this. Honestly, I know prison can't be great, but being a slave in the house of Potiphar wasn't great either. I'm thinking his life actually got a little bit easier in prison in some ways. Oh, okay, I understand some of the freedom he had in Potiphar's house, but he wasn't working as hard. I bet he didn't have to worry about being whipped if he didn't work. I mean, being a slave is not a walk in the park. This isn't necessarily a demotion, although clearly being in prison is not cool. But it doesn't matter to Joseph anyway. It doesn't matter to him if he's working his dad's flock or if he's working for Potiphar or he's in the prison. What he wants is God with him, and that's all he cares about. That's the cool thing about working for the Lord. It doesn't matter who your boss is, which is good for some of you who have really jerky bosses. When you work for the Lord, I work for the Lord. And what he's basically saying is wherever God puts me, I'm going to work for him. It could be anywhere. It can even be a prison. So what happens in prison? Joseph's master took him, put him in the prison, a place where the king's prisoners are confined, and he was there in the prison, but the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. Again, favor. I think this guy knew about Potiphar's wife too. I have a hunch. Oh boy, yeah. We've heard about her. But he finds favor with him. What does that mean? That means he trusts him, just likes him. Ever meet somebody just like him? That's what Joseph is with everybody he meets. They just like the guy. Watch what happens now. The keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever they did there, it was his doing. And the keeper of the prison did not look into anything that was under Joseph's authority because the Lord was with him. And whatever he did, the Lord made to prosper. You want to talk about a cool gift of the Spirit? Everything you do, prospering, is a cool gift of the Spirit. That's what Joseph has. He can't help himself. It's just he does it, and it works out. Amazing. He's never picked up the wrong screwdriver in his life. I can just tell. You know, like some of you guys, you know, it's like, crap, it's a flathead. I got a Phillips. He never did that. Everything prospered for him. That's how I picture him. Always had the right wrench in his hand, always had the right screwdriver. Whatever he did, everything fit. Cut his angles, everything just matched. You know, whatever they put him to do, it just prospered. And not only that, everybody working for him, same thing. It's like, wow. Everything just prospers here. That's some kind of a gift of the Spirit. And wherever God puts him with this, he uses it because he doesn't care who prospers because of it. That's a big deal because some of us have a problem with that. Why should I work for that jerk? Well, he's getting promoted because of my work. Joseph works for the Lord. And he just goes wherever he is. I'm just simply saying, is there a blessing in an area of your life that you've overlooked? There's something God has given you to do that you just seem to be really good at, but you don't think it's that big a deal. Or maybe you don't even like it. Imagine that was your gift. Imagine if God said, here's the gift I'm going to give you. I'm going to, you know, like the Wizard of Oz there, when they come to him in the end, he has gifts, he gives each of them. Suppose God worked that way. And he gave you the gift of the Spirit the same way. Here's the gift I'm going to give you. Everything you touch is going to work out. Oh, thank you, Lord. And it's going to prosper. Thank you, Lord. Somebody else. Really? That's my gift? I don't like that gift. Give it to somebody else. Give me that gift where I prosper myself. You know, we don't like that, but that was Joseph's gift. Even when he was finally promoted to his final destiny, he's still going to be blessing everybody around him. He's okay with that because God is working his character to pure. And that's what happens. If the Bible talks about having pure, you're going to be pure as gold. Do you know how they make gold pure? They heat it. They heat it to a very high temperature, and all the imperfections float to the top. It's called dross, and they scrape it off. That's how you make gold pure. God's going to make your heart pure. Guess how he does it? Joseph's going through quite an intense training session here. But that's because God has something really, really special for him. I just got to warn you, the more special God has planned for you, the more you're going to go through to get there, because He's got to take the dross out of your life. And it might be an area of your life that you're overlooking because you don't like it, but you happen to be really good at it. The pure heart will always find a way to serve the Lord, and they will surely be rewarded.